Good saying.
Amazing.
Thanks, Karak Shop podcast.
Great idea.
I can't believe we're doing this.
Disruption! Life is movement.
Which elevates the question.
Hey, I am who I am.
What is the title?
3 karaks later.
Nice.
I love that.
How are you?
Assalamualaikum. كيف الحال؟ Free chai, huh?
Karak? Karak, please. Yes. How's it going?
This is weird. I can't believe we're doing this.
I don't want to be self-referential, so yeah.
There you are. There we go.
Skål. All right, let's get into it. What's up?
Okay.
What is up?
So I have a deck of cards.
Go.
It's got questions on it.
Hit it.
We're gonna pick one question.
Let's
Who
go.
wants? Anybody wants to pick it at random?
No, wait. I'll tell you what. I'll shuffle.
Okay.
Somebody will cut. And somebody will pull.
All right.
Cut. Pull. Hit me.
Okay, Sean, go for it.
If you met your descendants, what would they thank you for? Oh man.
No, there's no shallow.
Definitely
There's no
not
surface.
this.
There's no warm up. Just go right into it.
Definitely not embarrassing them by doing this.
If you met your descendants, what would they thank you for? Wow, so much for so much for warm up.
Okay, let's do a thought experiment, right?
Okay.
Descendants, what we're talking about? 50 years, 100 years?
I'm thinking like 3 years. 3 generations.
Oh, 3 generations. So we're talking maybe 150 years,
Yeah, okay.
right? Let's call it 200 years. 200 years.
At least remembered. At least descendants that are like, "Oh, I know Grandpa Ray."
All right, so let's call it 100 years.
Okay.
100 years. What does the world look like in 100 years?
From here or past?
No, from here. What does it look like? If looking at 100 years in the past gives you an idea of now, to scale, maybe, but
So much dependency on AI,
okay.
Yeah.
space exploration,
Okay. Space exploration or commercial space flight?
commercial space exploration.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're totally forgotten. We're gonna be completely forgotten. It's like Earth. Remember Earth? What is Earth?
Okay, let's make it a bit more generic. Not our direct descendants. People in general.
Humankind.
Yeah, what would they think?
For me, I would say kind of like a breaking a cycle of oppressiveness and a little bit of a patriarchy. So I would say for me, the descendants I want them to thank me for being thoughtful about them, about where I am, about what I'm doing, and how I'm taking care of my sons, so that their sons are like, wow, Grandpa did a really good job taking care of my dad, giving them all the opportunities that they could, and getting them to experience life and not entitlement. So maybe I want them to thank me for giving authentic life experience for my kids
Okay.
and not an easy entitled life.
So I don't have kids, so I can't really relate, but as somebody with kids,
When you do.
if we'll see. But if as somebody with kids, Sean, does that resonate with you, and is it also like one of the priorities, or do you feel that you just kind of have to do that because they're your kids,
No, I
like
think
taking an emotional step back?
How many kids do you have, Sean?
two. Two girls. So I think just thinking about my descendants, the long answer would be like both my families come from two opposing like cultural forces. So my dad's side is like the British, and my mom's side is like the Dutch Afrikaans, and they had a big fight. And I think my like everything I do is just to get people to turn around and face each other and see each other's humanity, because maybe that's like shaped who I am. You know, listened and talked about like DNA shaping who you are, maybe. But I feel like the biggest issue with the world today is that people don't see each other for humans.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a burden in me to like make sure that my children see people as human beings. So yeah, it's a deep and dark burden
Yeah.
that I carry.
You know, I would add to that for one of the things I've realized a lot more recently, as I started getting into remembering ancestral, like who my ancestors were. And the more I dug deep, the more I realized that
I wonder what set you on that path.
I don't know.
Thinking about your ancestors.
Thinking about my ancestors. I don't know. It's kind of like my favorite word. I realized that my family, they have Lebanese and Greek roots, have moved from Lebanon to Egypt, where my grandfather was born in Lebanon and then moved to Egypt. And then my father was born in Egypt. And then he moved to Abu Dhabi. And then I was born in Abu Dhabi. And then I moved to the States. And then now it felt like we had, just realizing that we had like a nomadic life of moving around, where belonging is always like a big question mark. But if I were to have my descendants thank me for anything, is to not keep moving around just to run away for opportunities, but to try to have roots that are authentic. I know that I'm born and raised in Abu Dhabi, and it feels like it's, you know, it's hard to have roots because I'm not indigenous from Abu Dhabi. But the lesson is that you could make home wherever you are because of your family, and because of my wife, because of my kids. And so this would be home. Home is not somewhere to move to, but home is within me. So I want to teach that to my kids, that home is within you no matter where you go. And belonging is a little bit overrated, but that you can adapt and then you can find home wherever you go.
You know, it's interesting because on a social level, it's relatively a new concept in our modern society that people move around or are from different places or have experienced different homes throughout their life. But in truth, life is movement. If you don't move, there is no life. Entropy happening gives rise to life. The human body is made of 206 bones for a reason, to move. To digress back to the question, I'll say I have zero delusion that somebody would remember or thank me about anything 20 years from now, 40 years from now, whatever it is. Yeah, I think there's a deep philosophical yearning to want to leave a legacy, to want to leave an impact. In some cases, yes, that happens, but again, in this little blip of our existence, it's still going to be forgotten. It's still not going to be anything, and it will all be reset. So I think for me, what I want is, and it's a bit of a selfish reason, but is for people to thank me now while I'm alive.
Yeah.
I don't want to need to wait until my ancestors need to thank me for something. And I take that by my individual interactions every day.
Yeah.
Which comes back to what you said about people looking at each other.
Yeah.
The way I look when I walk into a room, for the most part, people are going to be like, well, what is that? What? I get stopped in an airport in America because my name is Muhammad.
Yeah.
Or Bashir. And I get stopped in the airport here because I have dreadlocks.
Yeah.
So there's no real fit.
Yeah.
But the moment I stop and I talk to them and how was your day? What's going on? Oh, it's been a busy day, that kind of thing. They see this little, okay, no, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like when I come down from the airport, I take my bags and I go straight to the frisking room. I know the guys there. I'm like, hey, man, you're
Just
late.
go. Might as well go.
You're late, man. What's up? And he like smile. Okay, go. Like,
My
"You
homies
sure?"
are waiting for me.
Yeah. So I think the fact that this kind of romanticized idea of a legacy that I'm leaving, if you think about that and that dictate what you're doing, you're going to miss out on doing this stuff actually every day.
So like the legacy is now, it's not necessarily just later, which elevates the question.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, I can't even tell you my great-grandparents' names. And, like, I should be the most connected people to that. So
Right.
it's true. But
So what would, if I were to rephrase the question and be like, what would you like to be thanked for now? Or in your lifetime, if there's anything that you could be thanked for in your lifetime, what would it be? If legacy is now.
Again, I think this is a little bit of a selfish thing that I do, but for the most part, the circles that I'm around is a lot of people who are busy, who are productive, want to do stuff with.
No.
When I see them and I stop and I ask them genuinely, because I'll say, how are you? But I don't say it that way. I'll be like, how are you? Even if they don't answer me, it gives them that moment to pause and think, to take a moment from the chaos that's around them and give them time to reset with the natural flow of things. I think that's the main thing I want people to thank me for.
I would love to be thanked for saying something that's on people's minds that they couldn't say.
Being the bold voice.
Being a bold voice, whether it's in conversation, whether it's through film, whether it's through music, whether it's through writing, and I think that's
What do you
something.
feel is missing to empower them to be their own bold voice?
Well, I wanted to ask Sean, what do you want to be thankful for though in your lifetime?
Actually, very, very similar. Like, I do a very similar thing where there's a lot of segregation in India, which is where I live, and I feel like one of my favorite things to do is to acknowledge this inverted commas, the smaller people. When I do photography, I always make sure I like take a portrait of the guys carrying the lights. It's just this thing that I've got a whole gallery of guys that carry lights for me. But I feel like that's the most important thing you can give someone is just like, even if it's a split second of like, this guy's a human,
Yeah,
maybe that'll like grow.
Yeah.
And then maybe tomorrow he gets a minute, maybe, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a grandiose kind of view of yourself, but I feel like I like it when people actually take time to listen to me. So
yeah.
Do you feel like this is something that I enjoy, so I need to impart it on others, kind of thing? Because you have that, first of all, awareness.
Yeah.
Because awareness is the biggest part of it. But second of all, you have that bold voice to make it happen. So again, that would be a question for the both of you.
Yeah.
What do you feel is missing to empower people to be their own bold voice on an individual level?
I met this like photographer. He's a young guy. The world was his oyster. He was like a Labrador puppy, and he's speaking to this older lady in India, and he was like, I just want to like my photography. My goal is to empower women. And she turned around and was like, who the hell do you think you are that you can empower a woman? And so I don't know if like I can empower somebody per se, but maybe there's a moment where they can kind of gather themselves together and be like, hey, I am who I am, and then carry on. Maybe that pause, like you mentioned, is enough.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's greater things you can do to bring like awareness to something. I don't know if that's all the way connected to empowerment. I think it's a very complicated kind of a concept.
Yeah.
But
To me, it's disruption.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is-
Disruption of what?
Is seeing a pattern or a system that's going in a certain way or a certain thread, a certain trend that's
like that.
going. When everyone is trying to do something or film something a certain way, I'll disrupt it and go do something else. And if everyone started to do this thing that I started doing, I'll disrupt and go somewhere else. But that's like when it comes to work. But when it comes to, like meeting someone today during a meeting who is constantly deep in work and meetings, and then you say, hello, how are you? And it's a very phased like, hi, how are you? But to like pause and notice like, we know that face. That's the face of almost someone that's getting burnt out. To notice and to track autopilot. An autopilot that's going on, because I feel like I think most people can be on autopilot with anything, with something, and all it takes is someone that's aware enough to notice that they're on autopilot, and to pause and to disrupt, and ask a good question like you would do, which is you're pretty good at asking questions.
Here's a follow-up. We all hear this word disruption in the cycle and things, and people automatically on the surface say, okay, this is not a good thing. But if everybody's disrupting, then nothing's going on, nothing's consistent,
Nothing's happening.
nothing gets done, right?
Stop, pause. You stop too.
Yeah, and then the lights go out, and then the buses crash, and then the alligators come out.
Buses
of
are not
sewers.
moving. And
But yeah,
cars are
why,
stopping.
Why are we always wanting to disrupt? Is this like a childhood trauma of being way too chill, and is that going to be translated to the next generation? Are they going to want to kind of chill because we were so disruptive? Why is disruption a good thing?
I think disruption is not a majority. I think the majority is autopilot. I think disruption is rare. Disruption is a minority. Disruption is reserved for, I don't know. I think that's why we need the artists.
Okay.
That's why we need films. That's why we need stories. Because generally, we live on autopilot majority of the time. And it's very hard. I don't think everyone can be an artist or a disruptor. So I feel like there's no way for disruption to become the majority, whether the world's going to stop. Disruption is like the work of a prophet, and prophets are so rare because they're not always accepted. They're not always, and so disruption is not always accepted. It's not always welcomed because it's so rare. and it also has rejection, and it also has a lot of risk. And human beings are not very into taking risks. They want to seek comfort. They want to seek the most safest option. So I think majority of people do that.
Do you feel that that kind of marginalizes a bit the fact the idea of disruptors or artists is kind of reserved for a certain group of people who have the capacity, something outside of their own hands, somebody who's born naturally outspoken or born who notices things? Because some of these things are inherited, being an introvert or wanting to stay home. These things are not free will of our own. So is somebody born an artist and a disruptor, or is everybody born an artist and then depends on what path they take?
I think everyone can and should disrupt something. I think it would take an extraordinary circumstance for someone to live their entire life without disrupting something. We're all gonna face something. Someone's gonna at some point have to be like, this situation that I found myself in isn't cool. I need to change it. We need to change it. So,
but isn't that the mentality of 80% of the world's population?
But that's assuming that everyone is aware and has awareness and has reached a level of awareness of their subconscious and what they're doing unconsciously, right? Because
Good
Zain.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
On that note,
I don't know. Like, I've gone backwards and forwards with this idea because I feel like at some point there's this really bougie view of creativity and disruption and this kind of stuff, but at the same time, like the proletariat, as it were, like this isn't like some savant like divine appointment of creativity. I think it's freely available, and I think maybe back to the previous thing. Maybe when you give someone a moment to think about something, maybe they can think like, hey, something needs to change. Maybe I should disrupt one thing. I think there's different forms of disruption. Like, I think there's this book called The Fourth Turning. Have you read it? Yeah, okay. So like we're in these different cycles, and maybe like the disruption that you're really driven to disrupt now won't be appropriate in the next generation because you've done something. Like this is one thing that needs to be, and then the next one is going to be a different archetype, and the disruption.
Like making KFC and McDonald's. It was extremely disruptive at the time, and now it's
just common, right? So, looking at like the freedom of speech movements, and then like the women like voting movements and all that kind of stuff. That stuff is taken for granted now. That took a huge amount of disruption. But if you were going out in the street doing that now, it would be like a bit of a silly thing to do unless it was appropriate. So.
Like one of the things I learned in some biomimicry experiences that I've had is we were planting potatoes. We learned how to plant potatoes. And what we learned is that you can't keep planting the same potatoes in the same soil every year. And at some point, you have to mix it up with potatoes or seeds or other plants that are from other places in order to disrupt and to renew the soil. Because otherwise, the continuation of planting the same thing and growing the same thing, it doesn't grow anymore. When that hit me, that was something about the term of why we need diversity in culture versus monoculture, because diversity creates the evolution of something to grow rather than having something that is planted on autopilot and then it eventually dies and it doesn't grow.
And you have the potato famine.
The what?
The potato famine.
Yeah.
In Ireland. That was it. They grew one single potato.
Yeah. Speaking of famine, how about round 2?
Yeah.
Yalla bina.
All
I
right.
want to know what you think about disruption.
Me?
Yeah.
So my belief system is very empirical. It's based on evidence, whether it's plausible and I need to do research, or I'm always open to what I know is wrong, right?
Right.
A lifetime ago I was an engineer, so it's just how my brain is wired, scientific method. So from experience of the people that I've seen, whether I go to a small village in Chad and there's this one kid who is building tiny little windmills to generate electricity for his house, and that grows and grows and grows. Or if I go to Senegal and in the mountainside they call it ma'am. It's like the burial site of a Sufi person. So people go and they pray and they give them the incense and stuff. And that tradition there has been going on for hundreds of years. But that mountain is located right beside you know what a pink lake is? It's a lake that has this kind of fungus that.
Oh,
mixes.
yeah.
So that's very toxic to people.
Right.
But they'll still go there. And they know it's proven it's toxic. But nobody wants to disrupt the idea that we can't go there. Right? So what I found is there is a susceptibility of the person in front of you. You can never deal with the biomass of a community and say they're ready for disruption or not. It's absolutely on an individual level. And then it becomes a fractal game. I tell Ray, and he takes that moment and pauses, and I tell you.
Right.
And then you go tell your kids, and they tell their friends, and so on. And that's how I find real disruption happens.
Yeah. Like a ripple effect. It's very small.
Exactly. But if I go out and say, I'm going to disrupt this style of filming,
What you guys are doing is wrong.
it's there for a reason. It evolved for a reason. Maybe it's not intentional.
Yeah.
I think disruption is subconsciously intentional.
Yeah.
If you set out to be disruptive, you most probably won't. But if you find an opportunity and you're like, all it needs from me is that tiny little nudge,
Yeah.
and you do it, that'll most probably disrupt.
And this is where the idea of nudge theory comes from, where change doesn't come from playing and laying all your cards. A lot of creators I meet that are really, really frustrated with wanting to do something different and want the culture to change and want the mindset to change, and they cannot, do the thing that they really, really want to do because it's not going to be accepted. And I'm always finding myself having to be reminded, change doesn't come by having all your cards laid on the table. Change comes by playing one card at a time, one small poke at a time, one small nudge at a time. And it's a long game, and it's patience. But the frustration is that everybody wants to disrupt now.
So speaking of nudging, I do want to bring in a friend here.
Wait, who's here?
Fuad.
Someone's here. Oh, look who's here!
have a
Come
chair.
over here, both of
No,
you.
no, he's going to come in my place.
Okay.
Before Fuad comes in, the next question I want to leave you guys with is, my question is, why is it so important to us as people, as human beings, to feel that we need to be thanked for something?
طب انت رايح فين؟ لا لا تعال هنا. تعال هنا. تعال هنا رايح فين؟ Mic drop, card drop. Welcome, Fuad.
All right.
How's
this
it going?
This is beautiful setup.
What is your podcast experience like?
Okay.
Have you ever been on a podcast?
Yes.
Okay.
We
You
did.
know what? We've never been on a podcast.
I've been invited to a podcast for Dubai culture, and that setup has an hair and makeup, art direction, soundproofing, not and a cafeteria in Abu Dhabi.
Well,
Asma.
we're gonna ask you the same question, but first,
Okay.
let's get some tea.
Karak. Yes.
Okay.
ممكن شاي؟ ثلاثة شاي. يلا.
Done. Wow.
Which question would you rather answer?
Yeah.
If you met your descendants, what would they thank you for?
This is
Or
a
what would
lot of responsibility.
or what would they say? What would they ask? Maybe let's rephrase the question.
Okay.
If you met your descendants, what would they tell you or ask you? What question might they have of you?
They will probably have a question. Let's add 150 years from now. Dubai is going to be a different place by then. There is something to thank me. There's I think probably they will thank me for moving into Dubai.
Okay. Would they ask you any question? Would they say, "Hi, man, I wish I could meet Jiddu Fuad and ask him what life was like in 2025, 2024?"
I think there was probably a conversation prior to that, maybe living through COVID. That would be a biggest question. If pandemic doesn't happen between now and another 100 years.
What was COVID like?
Yeah. How was it to live through that? Because you want to ask the same thing a question that happened maybe in the 1920s.
Yeah.
Prior to that, any pandemic, that's the question. But the transition through AI, I think
Yeah.
that would be a question. What is it like to live before AI?
Right.
And I'm also a generation that was there before the internet, so there is a lot to ask. But the pre-internet, post-internet, pandemic, AI.
I feel like they're gonna ask
And-
TikTok. Really? TikTok.
You guys are on that.
You guys
for
were
real?
on TikTok. No,
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 but
no,
I
no.
think-
We were
I-
not
no,
on
no.
TikTok.
I think you might forget it because MySpace and other platforms have been forgotten,
Yeah.
and then they were not. That's
Yeah, like
20
Vine.
years
Like
ago.
no one asks
Yeah,
about Vine.
that's what everyone thinks, and then some archaeologist goes and digs up their bones. It's going to be the same.
We
find
found
the
a
TikTok.
Vine underground.
Yeah.
Kids,
We found this TikTok thing.
I think what they will find a lot of it is those pictures with the dog filter.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will find that. I don't have it, but they will find.
I'd love to see how
a
they
lot of
interpret
people.
that.
Okay. It's like sepia,
Yeah.
black and white, dog filter.
No, it will be color.
It will be color.
Yeah, because we took that.
It'll be
picture
color
on
because color is old
Yes.
in 2025.
Yes.
And whatever
But
that's
it's 2D
happening in
picture.
100 years. Yeah.
Same question for you, man. Descendants.
No, just like what is TikTok?
We haven't disrupted enough for us to be recognized in 150 years from now. No?
Okay.
You gotta be. I
There's
don't know.
only like. Do
Disruptive enough to be remembered
Yeah,
three generations down.
you think that's important to be
You-
remembered?
And that's a different question. That it's are you doing something right now to be recognized later? Back in the day, look, I have this thing. If you Google my name, don't, because you won't find me.
Okay, now I want to Google.
But it's Fuad Muhammad
Can you
Ali
Google
is
his
a
name?
very common Egyptian name, and you'll find Somali, you will find in Sudan. So it's very hard to find me. So I had a moment where I used to think that I need to do something that you could find me by Googling my younger me.
You know,
I no longer feel that way, but yeah.
you know, to answer your question, I'm going to flip the timeline and I'll go back to my ancestors and think about my grandpa.
Go one more.
My grandpa.
Great grand.
I don't know much about my great grandpa. My grandpa, who I never met, I only knew about him through stories. But what I have known about him is that he's a craftsman. He did leather work in Egypt. He was known to make leather jackets for the Englishmen. And he started a business where he created leather work stuffed camels, the first of its kind in Egypt. But he was also a boxer, and he was known to defend the underdog in his neighborhood. So a lot of like shiesty people would like try to lowball other
Right.
people. He'd come in and he would defend them because he was like really bulky, really strong. He looked like one of those boxer types, the
Those
black and white,
classic-
the
whatever.
classic,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the classic Don kind of person. And I never really thought much to it until honestly last year when I went to a wedding for one of my cousins in LA, and I had the entire family that I haven't seen in 30 years. And then I was taken aback by just me going to that wedding as a person that represents the lineage. I started to become aware of something that I've never been aware before. I started to not just name myself Ray, but I started to like acknowledge myself as I am Ray bin George, or son of George, son of Spiro, Haddad. And it felt like the more that I acknowledged a lineage, the more I started to realize, because we all have bits and pieces from our ancestors,
Yep.
the good and the bad, and we have bits of their DNA. And it made me go, the defender of the underdog is also in me.
Yeah, I can see that.
The craftsman is also in me.
Yeah.
And so when I think about thanking our descendants, thanking us, I don't think they're gonna like tell me, oh, I'm so glad that he did this. I'm so glad. I think I would be thanked for who I am and for what I am as being. So my grandpop being a defender of the underdog and someone who believed in his craftsmanship till the end. So I feel the same of my descendants. I want them to kind of go, wow, he was himself. I have that in my DNA. I'm just thinking that parts of me is going to be in somebody 150 years down the line.
You never met your grandfather. It's everything else that you know is you've been told from your dad. Now I'm trying to flip it. Your children should be able to talk about you. Otherwise, that would not ever happen.
Right.
So,
how much influence would you have on your children today so
For them
that
to
they
talk.
can pass on the story?
yeah. Otherwise, you need to be able to do something tangible. If you don't have something tangible, your great grandchildren would never go and find.
What are you doing now? Is there anything that you feel that you have done now to your son?
It's a very hard question. Yeah, this is very hard question. Look, parenthood is not something that you can read and follow. I think you figure it out as you go. And with Adam, three of us, we're figuring it out how to be parent. Myself as a dad, his mom, and him. Because with his support that we become those cool or great parents, and he make it a little bit easier. My motto is be there, because I feel like our parents were not there.
Yeah.
So just be there when he needs something. Just be there. We're lucky. I think Adam makes it a lot easier, and not only just parenting, but it's just being around him.
What does being there look like for Adam? And then I'll ask you the same question.
Because you look back.
Why is it important for you?
What is important for me? Because I don't think my parents were there for me growing up, and that would have made a lot more differences for me growing up. And I feel like being there might help with Adam. That's one. Second, we kind of grow up on a society. Our parents take parenting very lightly, probably. I think we take it really serious. And from that, we know what not to do, but we don't know what to do right. So with that in our hand, we just try to be there for Adam.
What about you, Sean? What is it that for your kids to remember you, to pass on your story to their kids? What is the impactful influence, or the thing for him, for Fuad, it was to be there for his kids?
No, definitely that, for sure. Hey, for one, like, you've decided to have kids. You've brought two human beings for us into the world. Like, why not be there with them? It's quite, like, it's a simple equation. Like, you're not just going to bring two people into the world and, like, ditch them. You know, we've talked a lot about change. And I genuinely believe that change doesn't happen anything slower than a generational pace. And I think kids are a great opportunity to, like, it sounds weird to say that, but to, like, embody really amazing things that, like you said, we know that wasn't the right way to do things. Like, if we can figure out something that may bring a bit of brightness to the world, I think that's the best way to do it, really, because grand change really does happen at a generational scale. But that's not to say that our kids are some science experiment where we're gonna, like, hey, let's try this with this one and, like, see what the world changes. I think it's just generally, like, if we're there, we're connecting. You know, like, that's the thing. If I'm not there, we're not connecting. And what's wrong with the world is that people aren't connected to each other. So it's my responsibility for, like, just our family to be connected. You know, and if that has some spill over into the greater world, that's great. But at least our family will be connected. We'll see each other. we'll be able to like talk about how we are seeing the world, what's affecting us, our emotions, see other people, maybe ponder why they're behaving like they are. And then, like I keep going back to, if we can just see other human beings without prejudice across the board, like maybe we can understand why they're like that. And
You
that
do
doesn't
that
make
and you do that by seeing your
connecting,
kids,
like you
by connecting
yeah,
with your kids.
like it's quite important if you think about it. But you've got kids as well.
I do, and for me is to hug my boys.
Yeah.
Nice.
Physical affection, hugging my boys, instead of like tough it up.
Yeah.
We don't do this hug thing, but to have hugs as a thing, because that was a thing that I did not necessarily experience. But if there was anything, it's one of the things that I want them to remember.
So as a parent, we're just trying to fill the gap that
Yeah.
our parent left behind.
Yeah.
So you make sure they have less trauma than the one we got.
Yeah. And is this how we disrupt things?
Maybe undercover, subtle.
What a disruption. It's probably the first of its kind. A karak shop podcast.
Right. That was a bit disruptive, wasn't it?
What is the title?
What is the title?
Yeah.
What should the title of this one be?
It doesn't even have a title.
Talata karak. Three karaks later.
Nice. Nice.
I love that.
One card down as well.
Well, I think it's just one card. That it is a one card conversation. I love it.
I like that. It's going to be published later
Yeah.
as a book. Yeah.
Mumkin.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We should sign on the card.
Great idea.
Episode 1.
Episode one.
And it goes on the framing.
Right? Put it right there. Next to the
Actually,
Golgapi.
might not be a bad idea. You will have a frame.
Ask people online, hashtag find the card.
Find the cards. So like right here.
And then with the QR code.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're starting a movement.
There you go.
There we go.
Disruption.
Abu Dhabi next to Ramada Hotel.
Cut.
This is nice.
that
I
good?
hope we sound better.